Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gage Dillon, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about Halloween Ends. Now, this movie I know was very polarizing for a lot of fans. A lot of people didn't like it. It was not at all what I expected. It was something different, and I'm really excited to get into it. The movie came out on October 14th, 2022. The movie stars Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie, Andy Matichak as Allison, James Jude Courtney as Michael Myers, and Rowan Campbell as Corey. It was again directed by David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, I believe. I am a huge Halloween movie fan, so let's just get right into it. For the story, I was really expecting something a lot more similar to the 2018 version and Kills. I was expecting it to not immediately follow up the way that Kills did, but to at least connect Kills to Ends. So when it started in 2019 with Corey babysitting Jeremy, 1 year after the massacre in 2018, it was a little bit jarring for me. I avoided trailers and previews as much as I could for this movie because I really didn't want anything spoiled for me. But I did find a leak on Reddit that had said something about Corey being a new Michael Myers. So when I saw his character and heard his name, I kind of knew what was coming. The opening wasn't bad. It started off really strong with the babysitter and the kid. Obviously, you knew that something bad was gonna happen, and I like the way that they set it up. In a way, I kind of thought that Jeremy was gonna do something to Corey. I don't know why, but it ended up with Corey accidentally causing his death, and the parents saw, and then it just kind of went from there. I mean, the beginning wasn't bad. It was pretty well done. I think that it lacked Michael Myers, of course, but it was a nice start to the movie since it kind of made the point that this was gonna be Corey's movie and not Michael's movie. So I give them props for starting the movie off that way with a bang and everything, but that's probably the only part of the movie that I genuinely liked because after that it kind of just goes downhill for me. I'm gonna try to stick to the points that I've made on my notes over here just so I don't get off topic with anything. I have to say that the twist with Corey ending up as the new Michael Myers after he stumbles upon him in the cave or drainage system or whatever, Michael Myers finally appearing was a good thing. We had kind of missed him for a good chunk of the beginning of the movie, but it really was kind of silly the way that Michael just grabs him, and then I guess it wasn't really followed up on what exactly happened in that scene. I guess he saw the evil in Corey, or maybe Corey saw the evil, I don't know. It was just a little bit silly. But whenever they ended up with him turning evil and everything, and he starts changing, Rowan Campbell did a really good job with giving that performance. He didn't have a lot to work with since the movie's kind of all over the place, but whenever he's slowly starting to turn into his evil ego, he did a really good job in making himself seem a lot more intimidating, creepy a little bit, and just overall a darker image for him throughout the rest of the movie. What I didn't like was how he seemed to be Michael's apprentice or something, whereas he was killing the nurse and the doctor, and Michael was just there to kill the nurse while he killed the doctor. Or whenever he lures Allison's ex-boyfriend, who's the cop, into the drainage system and helps Michael kill him. I don't know, I've always seen Michael work alone, especially since like Michael's always never really seemed to care who you are. He's gonna kill you regardless. And it seemed a little bit silly that Michael would just trust this dude. Also, the time jump really was a bummer because I know whenever the trilogy was originally announced, it was supposed to all take place in the same night, I believe. But I think something happened with COVID. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that the time jump was a new idea. And it really just kind of took away all of the steam that Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills had built up, and it unfortunately just kind of fizzled out by the time this movie came around, so I wasn't a really big fan of that. Moving on to the characters, Jamie Lee Curtis playing Laurie, perfection as always. I love Jamie Lee Curtis and everything. I thought she did a really good job, even though she doesn't feel like the Sarah Connor survivalist Laurie in 2018 and Kills. She still feels like Laurie in a way, but a little bit more human, almost like how she should have been at the beginning of 2018 versus now when Michael's MIA, but whatever. Allison was also pretty much the same, but then her character kind of took a little bit of a different turn when she falls head over heels for Corey after just, I think it's like a day. She's clearly seen as broken, really grieving the loss of her parents, whereas Laurie just kind of seems to brush it under the rug, which you can tell bothers Allison, but it's never really followed up on. They just kind of have their relationship and they come to blows at the end of the movie or towards the middle end of the movie. but it all kind of gets resolved in a really easy way where there's just no talking about how they're actually affected by the deaths of their family members. It just felt really weird to kind of put that on the back burner since this movie was supposed to be about grief. I could be wrong, or maybe I just didn't pay attention enough because it got kind of boring. Corey, I liked his character enough until it got really silly with the Michael Myers apprentice thing. Him and Allison's romance felt kind of like Romeo and Juliet as far as how it just felt really middle school, like, type of relationship. It just felt like we were spending this time with these characters whenever it was eventually just gonna result in nothing. I really liked Corey in the beginning whenever he was fully like himself before all of the stuff happened. You could tell that he was a likable character and that he wasn't like the other teens that I'll get into later. But he had a really good personality whenever he was babysitting at the very beginning of the movie. Fortunately with that, it of course probably changed who he was as a person, but his character itself just got really bland and generic. Whenever it got to the time to him being the new Michael Myers, it just felt really pointless, especially since he ended up dying and stuff at the very end of the movie. It just really served no purpose building his character up in the first maybe 2/3 of the movie and just taking him out super easily. It just was a really big missed opportunity. Moving on to Michael. Michael was barely in this movie, unfortunately, but when he was around, he just didn't feel like himself. I mean, the kills were like gruesome in the last movie, so the few kills that he did get in this movie, I thought that he would at least gave us some really gory kills, but unfortunately they were all very PG-13. All of the kills in itself were, except for one specific one. Michael also just felt a lot less intimidating than in kills in 2018. He felt a lot older and somehow more human, even though this one was supposed to be the one where he's like evil incarnate, but he's always been that, so I don't know what they were going for in this movie. He just didn't feel like how he did in 2018 in Kills. He felt a lot more reserved and tame, at least until the very end of the movie. Now, Frank, the officer, I can't remember his last name, he was fine. I mean, he was a good love interest for Laurie. I thought it was cute whenever they kept like meeting in parts of town. I really liked that. It wasn't horror, but at least I liked the two characters enough that I was at least happy whenever they were happy with each other on screen. You could definitely tell that they really liked each other and they have really good chemistry, so I wasn't mad at it or his character surviving. I thought it was a pretty good connection between those two. I did like their ending at the end where they just kind of sit and reminisce or talk or whatever. On to the teenagers. I don't even remember their names. Let me. All right, Terry, Stacy, Margot, and Billy. I didn't even remember their names until just reading them now. They're all kind of just like, I'm gonna just consider them one category because they didn't really get anything fleshed out. Their performances were great, good actors, no hate to their performances at all. It was just really unfortunate with what they're given. I mean, they are just nasty whenever you're first introduced to them, rude for no reason. Just their characters really suck. Like, they were continuing to be rude to even Laurie whenever she came. I know one of the girls specifically, like, she like mocked, she was like Michael Myers or something. And she just, all of these teens had a very nonchalant attitude towards anything that happened in the first two movies of this trilogy. They just straight up did not care and treated everything like a joke. And even so, they were just very, very nasty. Whenever they asked Corey for the alcohol and he says no, one of them immediately brings up that he killed Jeremy and then start twisting the story. And of course, just being the usual nasty teenagers. This is what we're gonna do here, like have these teenagers, like you would at least want them to be like this new group of teenagers who, you know, you would get to know, get scared for, and not want them to die. Here, I mean, whenever they first started talking, I was like, all right, well, if these characters were awful, their names were barely touched upon, very little character development, and pretty much served no purpose to the script other than just being idiots and adding to the body count for Corey. So those are pretty much the only characters that I really can say were a big part of the movie, minus the teenagers. I just felt like I needed to talk about them all as a group because there was just no substance or character development between all of them. I mean, you can kind of see one of them has a rough home life or something, I believe, with his dad, but even so, it's never really followed up on and they just continue to act crappy to each other or to other people. It was just not good. Now, moving on to the horror of this movie. I know that the Halloween movies usually aren't scary as much as they are suspenseful and jumpy, but this one didn't feel like it was even trying beyond the opening. I know that they said that this was a coming-of-age horror story. There were maybe a few jumps, but oh my gosh, I almost forgot to mention Lindsay. forgot to mention Lindsay because she's barely in this movie. I don't know why they had her survive in kills if this is what they were gonna do to her character. I mean, sure, they were all hanging out at Lori's house and they were all having a good time. She owns the bar or runs it or something. And that's pretty much it. Her character doesn't have a confrontation with Michael. She never talks about Tommy, nothing. It's like a big wasted opportunity. Yeah, I didn't really remember her up until just now, so Kyle Richards did a good job, but I feel like they probably should have just let her die in kills. Even though she fought really good, her character was just wasted here. And she didn't feel like the same type of Lindsay that she did in the previous movie. Moving on to the horror of this movie, the opening had some good potential with the creeping around the house and all of that, but then after that, establishing Corey and how he dealt with all of the trauma that he had went through. Whenever he was accused of killing Jeremy on purpose, it took a lot of a toll on him, and that's mainly where the movie's direction is. It's not focused on Michael or horror until about maybe 45 minutes or an hour, and even then, it's just really quick scene and mainly murders, which aren't even set up to be scary. No jump scares to really be seen throughout this movie, except for maybe the opening and a few select scenes, but other than that, there was really just nothing scary about this one, I'm sorry to say. In my opinion, the kills. The kills were very weird for me because in Halloween 2018, the kills were pretty nasty and kills just raised the bar entirely with all of their nasty kills, which I know was the point. But here it seems like they took a bit of a step back as far as how people died. Quite a few of them were off screen. Jeremy's death was actually pretty good. It was a surprise. So it was a pretty disturbing way to start the movie off. But then whenever you move on from that, cop ex-boyfriend of Allison, the nurse and the doctor, and even the teens, all of them are very muted, tame kills. One of them gets their head stomped in. It's nowhere near the brutality of the way that Dr. Sartain's was in 2018. One of them gets their face blowtorched off or something, but you can't really see because it's blurred. Stacy's death, I don't even know how she died. I think she was just hit a bunch of times with a pipe. One dude was just stabbed in the eye off screen. The only kill that really stood out to me, aside from Michael Myers' death, was the DJ who worked at the radio tower, which, by the way, seemed to serve no purpose in this movie, even though it was established in kills for some reason. The DJ seemed to get really messed up, shown like really graphic detail of his face being slammed and his tongue actually being scissored off. Gruesome compared to the other kills that had happened beforehand in the movie. So once all of this happens, and whenever Corey finally gets to Lori, who's making a fake call to the police, he comes in and she somehow knew that he was gonna show up, and she shoots him pretty easily, and he mocks her a little bit once he's downstairs, and I can't remember entirely, I'm gonna be honest, but something along the lines of Allison would never forgive you. He just stabs himself in the throat pretty easily. That was it. Right before Michael showed up. Speaking of Michael, one thing I didn't talk about, I thought it was ridiculous that Corey was able to steal Michael's mask and Michael didn't really do anything about it whenever he immediately chased down Karen after she took his mask off. Pretty silly and really unbelievable, especially since Michael is known for his mask. Moving on, whenever the ending finally comes, the fight really lasts for maybe like 10 minutes. And he seems to be taken out pretty easily compared to all of the bullet wounds and all of the knife stabs that he'd survived. It just takes her stabbing his hands, like pinned to the counter by butcher knives. Then she like slams a refrigerator onto him, and she has him pinned down, and they have their little moment after they fight, and then she slowly slits his throat and wrists and lets him bleed out slowly. It seemed very anticlimactic, especially given everything that's happened in all of these movies, whether or not they're still canon or not. It just seemed like a really anticlimactic way to take out Michael. Allison shows up. That's where they decide to take Michael and tie him up with the help of the police officers, and somehow the entire town knows about this. Everyone somehow already knows that Michael just died maybe 15 minutes ago. And they take him on top of, I believe it's Allison's car, and they drive him to the auto yard where Corey had killed everyone before on his Halloween night of terror. And they ceremoniously dump Michael's body into the grinder, and then he's gone. Then after that, everyone celebrates that Michael's finally dead and gone. You can even see a cameo of Julian, who was in Halloween 2018, that was there in the procession, and Sandra, who had somehow survived kills. I have no idea how she survived that. I thought for sure that she had died in kills, but nope, she is still alive somehow. Then after that, Allison decides that she's gonna leave. Lori and Frank sit happily ever after on her porch after Lori does some more writing about evil and not fully dying, but just taking a new shape. I think that the ending did a pretty nice job at giving Lori some happiness after everything that happened to her in 2018 in Kills and Ends. Whether or not she brought it on herself a little bit, she at least deserves some form of a happy ending, especially if this is the last movie with her in it. Allison too, she's leaving Haddonfield, which seems to be the best option for her so she can get a new fresh start. So it seems like everyone kind of got what they deserved in the end, but this movie just really blew for me. And you know, that's my opinion. I know that a lot of you probably felt the same way as far as saying it sucked, but then I also know that a lot of you guys enjoyed it. But I mean, power to you if you did, because this was definitely not a Halloween movie for everyone, but it at least tried something new. I mean, none of it really worked for me. The characters were not good. Most of them were just unlikable. The horror was non-existent. The story seemed very silly, especially just to kind of depart from what you had built up in 2018 and Kills, and then just kind of fizzle out with this really weird coming-of-age romance horror story that felt like Christine a little bit. I know that that was intentional, but it just really felt more like that than Halloween, and that's really not what you would want from the Halloween franchise finale. It just did not work for me. But I'm curious to hear what you guys thought of it and y'all's opinions, and I love to discuss anything horror. So make sure to leave a comment down below about what you thought of Halloween Ends, and maybe even leave your ranking. Those are always fun to read about and discuss with. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the movie. I think it's probably in my bottom 3 for the Halloween franchise. I still don't give Halloween Resurrection any credit for anything it did. It was terrible, but this is definitely a close second. Other than that, I think that pretty much covers this review. Thank you for watching. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe because I love to talk about anything and everything horror, and I have a future Halloween video coming up, so make sure to keep your eyes out for that. But thank you for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.